kick this thing off. So thank you
Uh,
so much again. Take it away.
yeah, thanks Denise for the great introduction. Um, what's up, guys? It's good to see some familiar faces on this the Zoom screen. So today I'm going to be talking about selling cookware at the booth specifically. So today I've got a few intentions. I just want to kind of break some barriers of kind of the complexity behind what I think a lot of people believe is selling cookware at the booth. And at the same time, also giving some simple one-liners and some simple things that I've kind of tested and experimented with over the last 4, 5, 6 years of being intentional with selling more cookware. I will say this at the end of the day, I think cookware is probably the one of the biggest areas of opportunity specifically for um, reps at events because there's so much cookware already being sold at events that is not Cutco. Whether it's hex clad or whether it's any other type of pots and pans, the high quality stuff or the low quality stuff that you're going to see up at events. So I think that there's a huge area of opportunity. The ceiling is very high with cookware. Your intentionality, though, completely dictates what happens at the booth. If you end up selling a lot of cookware, it's because you're intentional and you're good with your scripts. If you're not selling a lot of cookware, it's just because you're simply not being intentional with pots and pans. So I've got three things we're going to talk about today, and then I've got a little bit of time after I finish up to do some Q&A. So if you guys have some questions, be sure to jot those down, and I'd be happy to answer those before I have to hop off today. So today I want to talk about how to position cookware, specifically how to position the sets in a very simple and direct manner and uncomplicated manner. I also want to talk about just your display, and then I also want to talk about just kind of how to specifically your pitch at the booth and your specific use of the cookware and how those two play very much hand in hand with your ability to sell more cookware at the booth. So first things first, when you guys are positioning cookware, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they overcomplicate a simple process. Okay, we overcomplicate a simple process. I think one of the best pieces of literature that exists within all of the literature that we get as CSPs is the Cutco Kitchen handout that Cutco has created with the legacy set, the family set, and the basic set. Okay. Um, I will say this, there are 17 different kitchen knives in an ultimate, right? So that can seem complicated, especially when you try to explain all 17 of the kitchen knives. And as you guys probably are already familiar with, when you sell ultimate sets, very rarely are you really explaining more than 6 or 7 or 8 of the knives, right? It's an idea. All three of the cookware sets are an idea, right? So when you are talking about specific sets within our like what we have the ability to sell, don't overcomplicate something that is designed to be simple. Okay. I will say this, your customers know how to use pots and pans more than they know how to use different types of knives. Okay. There is a pre-existing understanding that a 3-quart saucepan will be used for pasta, right? There is just an understanding that a 10-quart stock pot can be used for chilies and soups. There is an understanding that a skillet can be used for hash browns and bacon, right? Now, sure, we have a little bit of a different pots and pans situation, so we can talk about how our lids work and things like that. But when you are explaining the sets, you do not need to get into the weeds, okay? So the question that I ask you before I jump in is, how are you introducing our sets when you are talking about our sets, right? Do you call them by what they are in the price list, right? Are you calling them an accomplished set, right? Are you calling them a dedicated set, right? Or are you using easily relatable nicknames like we do within our knife sets, right? So just like we have created the ultimate as the complete, just like we have created the signature as the family and the homemaker as the basic and the galley as a starter, right? That is very much something that you should, if you are not already, implementing into your cookware script, doing the same thing, right? So our legacy set is our complete set, right? Like I don't sit here and say, yeah, this is our legacy set, Mrs. Jones. Like this is our complete set of knives. Okay. Right. I like saying when I'm talking about the overarching umbrella of the legacy set, right? What I love saying is your complete set allows you to take all of your old cookware right? And get rid of all of it and replace every single pot and pan that you have. The person that likes the idea of having our complete set, you are allowing yourself to completely start over with high quality cookware and never have to worry about using another pan for the rest of your life. Our family set gets you all of the workhorses in the set. It gets you the everyday pieces and a couple of accessory pieces for occasional jobs. Nothing complicated, right? Our dedicated set, guys, is what I call is our basic set, right? So it gets you everyday pieces. Most pans will be dirty every day, and you also get a few family size pieces as well. Okay. So when you're first explaining sets, keep it simple and generic. Okay. Start with an overview of everything, but you might have some customers that ask questions, right? Which will get into more detail on maybe some specific names and uses if you guys have questions on that. But just like we have names and uses for our knives, it's important to have names and uses for pots and pans just in case they ask. Okay. But when I'm talking about our complete set, guys, I'm keeping it very simple. Okay. So with our complete set, Mrs. Jones, you get 3 fry pans, you get 3 size saucepans, you get a small, medium, and large utility pan, which are our skillets. Okay, small, medium, and large skillet or utility pan, whatever you want to say there. I prefer utility pan because it just kind of brings in more to the fold, right? You also get our 3 accessories, right? And these are the only 3 pieces that I'm going to even talk about when I am explaining the complete set. I do not talk about the fry pans. I do not talk about the saucepans. I do not talk about the skillets. Okay. I'm just going to mention the 3 things, just like we talk in the homemaker, guys. I think the homemaker is the best example because when we're brand new, what does our manager tell us to talk about? The spatula spreader, the butcher knife, and the forks. And we build the shit out of those. We're like, these are the best things since sliced bread that you've never had, right? By the way, a double boiler, a steamer unit, and a Dutch oven cover, high dome cover, are things they might be aware of, but they might not be totally understanding of how that'll be applicable to their daily life. So those are 3 things that I'm going to mention. Okay. So I'll say, and you get 3 accessories, Mrs. Jones, right? You get our steamer unit, fantastic, Mrs. Jones, for doing like beer brats, or if you ever do like steam buns, right? I personally use it a lot as a strainer for pasta, right? The double boiler, Mrs. Jones, is a great way to reheat like nachos, reheat a slice of pizza, right? Or if you like do any type of baking to melt down chocolate, caramel, almond bark. And then you get our high dome, Mrs. Jones, which goes on top of our biggest utility pan or our biggest skillet. And that does a great job if you guys occasionally do corn on the cob. You can fit 21 ears of corn in this bad boy. It's crazy. But if you ever wanted to do a whole chuck roast without putting in the oven and heating up your entire kitchen just to do a chuck roast, you can just do that right in this pan as well. And then you get our bigger, and then you also get our family pieces, right? So I mentioned specifically the family pieces. That's how I talk about the legacy pieces. They're just the family pieces. Or what I like using is using the word entertaining pans, right? So you get a wok, Mrs. Jones, which is essentially a skillet on steroids, right? So if you guys ever want to do Rice Krispie treats, or if you guys like to do like all of the chicken breast, or if you like to do 4 to 6 pounds of ground beef at a time, right? This is the pan that you have to have if you're cooking for more than 5 people. The Dutch oven, or excuse me, the 10 quart stock pot, Mrs. Jones. This one's absolutely fantastic for your chilies, your sauces, and your pastas, right? If you do a ton of hard boiled eggs, it's also fantastic for that, right? My favorite part about the big stock pot, Mrs. Jones, is it doesn't burn the bottom of the pan, right? Like every other stock pot does. Then you get our 4 quart Dutch oven, Mrs. Jones, which is probably my favorite pan now if you're making rice for 3 to 4 people at a time. It is just the best size because most pan sets, Mrs. Jones, have 3 quart sizes and 6 quarts, and they never have something in the middle. The 4 quart is perfect if you're cooking for 3 to 5 people. It's amazing. And it's not too big to put into the dishwasher. And then the griddle, Mrs. Jones, is my favorite piece. It's a great attitude adjuster. Just kidding, right? Hand them the griddle, right? They feel the density behind the griddle. This one's great because you can actually do 4 pancakes all on the same griddle, and you don't just cook in the middle, right? So that's how I'm explaining the legacy set, guys, right? When I'm talking about the accomplished set, it's like, cool, you get everything that you get in the complete set, Mrs. Jones. You just don't get the entertainer or family pans. That's it. right? You just get your kind of everyday workhorses. And then in the dedicated set, right, aka the basic set, it's just in the basic set, Mrs. Jones, you just get two of everything. Two saucepans, two fry pans, two skillets, and the most popular accessories. That's it. And keep in mind, Mrs. Jones, with all of these sets, you still get all of the utensils with these, right? So that's how I'm talking about the sets. It is not complicated. It is pretty simple. Okay. Do not overcomplicate a simple system. Your customers actually know how to cook better than you do for most people. Okay. I know they do. They know a better they know how to cook better than I do, right? I'm just getting started, right? But I have the understanding of simplicity sells with cookware. Okay. Second thing I want to talk about, okay, is the power of having more cookware in general at your booth and how you're talking about it, but also specifically where you're placing it. Okay. If you're struggling to sell cookware, if you feel like in general cookware is a huge opportunity for you at the booth, you have to ask yourself, how much are you actually showing it? How much do you talk about it? And specifically, how much of it do you actually have at the booth to talk about? Okay. If you feel like you are selling pieces, it is probably because you have pieces at the booth, right? You might not even have enough cookware at the booth to be creating interest in selling the big sets. Remember that cookware is very similar to our knives. If you have more to show, you will probably start to sell more cookware. I remember this would have been almost 7 years ago now. I was coaching with Jason Jeffrey, and I was complaining about how I was only selling like aspiring and dedicated sets. I was like, man, I can't get anybody interested in the freaking accomplished or the legacy set. And he's like, yeah, do you have the pieces in the accomplished set yet? I'm like, nope. Do you have any of the legacy pieces? I was like, I got a griddle. And then surprise, surprise, the year that I bought those pieces, I sold more legacy sets, more family cookware sets than I'd ever had. Right? Because once you have sweat equity, literally your dollars spending money on those items, you are now just that much more excited and also just motivated to sell those bigger pieces because you just purchased those items. So to make it worth your while, you got to sell more of the bigger sets, right? So just remember that having the big like three, and now that we have technically the four core Dutch oven, having those pieces both at your house to use and also at your booth is a great way to sell more legacy cookware sets, right? I also believe that the legacy pieces are the pieces that get people to stop at your booth, right? They just do. I can't tell you how many times I've had people pick up the lid of the wok and they're like, oh my God, this thing is amazing, right? Or they take the lid off of the top of the 10-quart stock pot, right? The shiny items, guys, gets people to stop. And it's also a huge CPO booster, right? We are still CPOing. Again, with a legacy cookware set, we are CPOing more than an ultimate set now, right? So the more you have, the more customers can visualize exactly what their set will look like. And also just be hyper intentional about keeping the cookware that you have all in one spot together. Okay. Again, I know this is kind of basic stuff, but I still think it's important to mention simply because a lot of people, they just kind of put cookware at the back or they put a couple pieces in the front just to like make sure people notice it. Right. That's why same thing with business gift guys. People are creating a business gift section. It's like, cool. This like 2 by 3 foot area is now business gifts with 6 different types of gifts. We used to just do one. And ironically, a lot of people bought just one piece sets because we just had one knife out. Right. It's the same thing with pots and pans. Okay. Now, to get to the nuts and bolts of this message, guys, selling more cookware is intentionally done by literally just teaching your customers at the booth how to use it. I've said this before. I know some of you guys, I see some names that were actually at my cookware demonstration at NET, but it's literally if you can get a person comfortable with taking something that they just don't believe they can do because of the stigma behind stainless steel, if you can teach them in about a 10-minute period of time that they can do what you are showing them, they will be open to buying the pots and pans. Not everybody will do it today, right? Just like people that want the knives, they won't buy them all today sometimes. That's life. But if you want to close more cookware orders, you are not selling them. You are teaching them how to use it and getting them excited enough about it as you teach them that they want to replace everything that they have at home. Okay. So I know some of you are not on Zoom, but for those of us that are on Zoom but not on video. So if you're not on video, you can use the little emoji thing. I'm curious who here on this call has ever sold cookware and then had the customer return it and said they didn't like it. I know I have. It happened to me like for like 4.5, 5 years between 2010 and 2015, and I just said, F the cookware. Okay. I just didn't sell it for like 2013 to like 2016. I was just like, I'm good. Like, I'm just gonna sell knives. Like, I'm just not gonna sell the pots and pans because everybody that buys it returns it. Ironically, guys, guess what I was telling everybody for like 5 effing years? I was like, yeah, just put butter on it and then turn on the pan and nothing will stick. So I was literally misinforming my customers for like 6 years, right? Keep it simple, stupid. I was just being an idiot, not knowing what the hell I wasn't talking about because I just didn't put the time in, literally to just learn the most important thing, right? So I've been there. I hate that feeling. I hate when people return cookware, specifically when they just don't know how to use it. So I kind of got sick and tired of that. I was like, I need to fix this problem. Okay. So the first question that I have to ask all of you is before we jump into like how to use the effing cookware and how to teach a customer how to use it is ask yourself, how comfortable are you using it? Right? If I showed up at your house right now and told you to cook me an omelet and it didn't stick with a 10-inch fry pan, could you do it? Right? If you could do it, great. You're probably familiar with using our pots and pans. But if you have any animosity at all about using the pots and pans and not being able to, if you are saying something but you don't feel like you are in alignment with it's the truth, you will not sell very much cookware. And that's why I didn't sell much cookware for the first 6 years of selling Cutco. It's simply because I just really didn't understand how to use it myself, right? So when we are going into cookware, okay, and at the booth specifically, I think there's a couple things that we have to remember that we have going against us off the get-go, okay? Most people have a stigma behind stainless steel. So going into the conversation, guys, you have to know that you already have something going against you on why they are not going to buy it. So my goal is to, again, just like I mentioned in the first key of keeping it simple, it's also to keep it very simple within my like one-liners, my kind of like simple things that I'm going to mention. So for example, guys, I am saying something similar to it is easy to clean, it is easy to use, it is built like a tank, and it lasts forever. I am saying those multiple times throughout the demo. Okay. Like medium to low is all you need to know. Always preheat the pan unless you're boiling water or steaming vegetables, right? Set, don't peak. All these little one-liners that you guys have seen and said before, I am saying those things multiple times. Okay. But the thing that I believe has single-handedly, this line has single-handedly allowed me to open more ears to what I have to say next, especially because of the awareness around forever chemicals that's happening in our country right now, is using this line. So if anything, guys, this line I think will make it worth your time today if you don't already know this line, which is, Mrs. Jones, our pans actually have the same benefit of a non-stick pan without any of the health risk. Our pans have the same benefit of a non-stick pan without any of the health risk or any of the toxic chemical coatings. It's another nice trigger phrase. Tell people be like, wait, what? Our pans have the same benefit of a non-stick pan without any of the toxic or chemical coatings. Or you can also just say without any of the health risk, right? My immediate question after this, guys, is have you guys ever cooked with stainless steel? So I want to get a question out or a power phrase out and then ask the question to figure out where am I at with this person? Okay. Something else that has completely changed my pitch within cookware is taking analogies of what they're used to doing already within their kitchen and applying them to our pots and pans. So again, I hope you have seen so far, this isn't crazy stuff. This is simple stuff, but it allows me to get and unearth where a customer is at. Okay. So immediately ask as after saying that line and asking the question, have you guys ever cooked with stainless steel? Most people will say, oh yeah, I've tried it, right? Or oh yeah, kinda. And I'll always say, cool, what's your experience been with stainless steel? Most people will say, like 80 to 90% of people will say, ah, they'll give you this phrase of like, yeah, do most things stick? And they'll be like, yes. I'll be like, cool, awesome. No worries at all, by the way. Not all stainless steel pots and pans are created equally, right? Not all stainless steel pans are created equally. So, Mrs. Jones, I'm curious. Would you ever take a room temperature steak that you've let sit and become room temperature and just throw it onto a cold barbecue grill? You, by the way, by asking this question, guys, will literally have people like get offended in a funny way. They'll be like, "What the hell are you talking about? Absolutely not." And I say, "Exactly. Why wouldn't you do that?" And they'll unearth this whole dilemma for me. They'll say, "Well, it wouldn't sear." I'm like, "You're right. It also wouldn't cook very good. And what would happen to the steak?" And they always say without fail, "Well, it would stick." So then I just immediately say, "Cool. So guess what you're going to do with a Cutco stainless steel pan before you ever put food on it?" And they say the same thing. Probably just preheat it. Crazy concept, right? And I'm simply helping pop this fear bubble, pop this thing that has never really crossed their ideas or minds until this moment, because they've never had somebody in their kitchen while they've hated their stainless steel tell them this little thing. That is very much common sense. But guys, you have to remember that we are fighting against something that has been going on now for 30 years, which is nonstick pans, which have not had to be preheated before throwing butter in. Okay. So the next thing that you do is you show them proof. Okay. And how do you show them proof? Most people here do not have a hot pad or a heat plate that are sitting at their pan or at their booth to show how to cook an omelet. I don't recommend that, by the way. You don't need to do that. Okay. You need to have conviction. The reason I mentioned and ask how comfortable you are in using the videos is the next step is to show the customers of you using the videos that you have on your phone how to make an egg in a stainless steel pan without it sticking. That is the next step. It's very simple. Cookware used to be health, 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 health. And health matters, don't get me wrong, but it is not the reason most people buy pots and pans. The reason why most people buy pots and pans is their stuff sucks. It's starting to flake, it's starting to break, and they just want to get some stuff. So our stuff is fantastic because it's just the one and done. They don't buy it again. We just have to get over the stigma behind stainless steel to start. Okay. So if you don't already have a cookware binder or a cookware folder in your phone, mine is now up to 260 pictures and videos. Do I show all 260? Absolutely not. I show like 11 or 12 every time. But I have multiple different scenarios and multiple different examples from friends that I've seen and my own self cooking random things that I don't necessarily cook all the time, but I'll record everything that I cook. It could be chicken, it could be steak, it could be rice, the simple stuff, right? That most people get frustrated with. I'm going to show them how easy it is to do. Okay. So the next step, okay, there are 6 videos, okay, that you need to record yourself doing. And I recommend making them all separate videos so you can just slide next picture, next video, okay? So write these down if you don't have them already. Have a not preheated pan, sprinkle water on it, watch it bubble, watch it sizzle and not actually dance, okay? So first video is a not preheated pan. The second is a properly preheated pan, right? So having something where you throw some water on it does a dance. 3 is throwing butter on it. 4 is putting the eggs in on top of that butter. 5 is flipping over the omelet. And then 6 is sliding the omelet around the pan and letting it slide onto a plate. Okay. Those 6 videos will help literally change your customer's perspective on stainless steel pans forever because it is you cooking it. Okay. So after I've already asked these questions, cool. If you threw a cold steak into a cold grill, what would happen? It would probably stick. Exactly. So guess what you should probably do before you throw butter into a pan when you're making eggs on a stainless steel pan? I should probably preheat it. Crazy concept. Now, the cool thing about the Cutco pots and pans, Mrs. Jones, right, is that because they're built so well, we have 5 layers of metal actually within our pots and pans, and 3 of the middle layers are actually aluminum. So it does a great job of conducting heat super well. So with our pans, Mrs. Jones, if you're cooking on gas, usually 60 to 90 seconds is all you really need for preheating on that medium to low heat. And if you're cooking on electric, it's usually 2 minutes or less. I'm not going to sit here and try to oversell them. Oh, your pans will preheat in 30 seconds, right? I'm all about prefacing expectations the correct way. I'm not going to try to oversell them on something because it doesn't need overselling, right? Okay, by the way, guys, you guys know this for those of you that can cook an egg in an omelet or in a cocoa pan, right? By the time you put the freaking eggs into the freaking pan, it is unbelievable how fast it gets done, right? Maybe 90 seconds after you put the eggs in, they're like kind of good to go, right? So the next hack, guys, is I really truly strongly believe in helping preface a person's expectations very early and very often. Because I want to get the person that says, oh, I don't want to have to deal with that. I want that objection to come up very early in my presentation if they're not. But most people, guys, don't enjoy their pots and pans because they are a headache to clean. So I'm going to be intentional about saying, cool. So after I show them the videos of the omelet, and I say, so I'm not going to try to sell you, Mrs. Jones, and make you believe that nothing is ever going to stick or burn. Because welcome to cooking. Okay. Things are going to stick and burn, right? All the time. Because that's cooking, right? Food is not really designed to it's not designed to float on top of the pan. That's not how food is made. So, Mr. Jones, my favorite part about the cocoa pots and pans is just how easy they are to clean if you do burn something. Okay. So the 7th to the 200th video that you guys record on your phone is you having a pan that cleans up easy. Okay. So if you have those 6 videos of an omelet, your 7th video should immediately be the video that you screwed up when you were cooking, or you just had something cooked too hot, or something burnt, or something wasn't easy. Like it just like the bottom of the pan does not look good. Record that. Your awareness and understanding of like helping a customer know that they'll screw up because you screw up, but it's still okay because the pans still work great after the fact is really important. Okay. So for example, after I show my omelet pan, right? I show an example. I'm like, Mrs. Jones, do you ever do bacon? And they'll say, yeah, I love bacon. All right. So let's say you do bacon and eggs or something, and something just burns at the bottom of the pan because welcome to pans that are food that's greasy, right? And I'll show this video, right? So, Mrs. Jones, the cool thing about our pots and pans is if you burn anything ever, literally ever, you're going to take a little bit of warm water, you're going to pour it into the pan, you're going to turn the pan all the way down to low for 5 minutes. And it is literally, you're going to take one of these handy dandy metal utensils. It is just going to scrape off the bottom of the pan. You're going to take a little bit of soapy warm water and a sponge. And this pan, Mrs. Jones, is a pan my buddy in this video has been using for 13 years. Okay. Now, Mrs. Jones, I love my pans to be super shiny and pretty. Have you ever had, Mrs. Jones, the experience with a stainless steel pan where you get the heat tint, or I call it the rainbow effect? And I show them a pan that's got the rainbow. Show them the pan that has the rainbow, guys. Do it. How many times have you got that stupid text? They're like, God, there's like rainbow. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on. Get ahead of it. Yeah, Ms. Jones, if you ever get rainbow, this is actually a good thing that stainless steel is doing, right? So stainless steel actually has a chemical called chromium in it, right? Or an element, it is not a chemical. An element called chromium, right? Which is actually helping prevent corrosion and rust within your pans. So just so you know, you can cook on the rainbow effect for the rest of your life. It'll never affect your food. It'll never affect the taste. But I just really like shiny, pretty pans. So have you ever heard of Barkeeper's Friend, Mrs. Jones? And they'll say, yeah, I love Barkeeper's Friend. So my next picture is that pan with a little bit of Barkeeper's. It's like a brand new pan, Mrs. Jones. Right? So instead of Mrs. Jones having to wait 3 hours to soak a non-stick coated pan to take that stuff off, I'm done with my cleaning, Mrs. Jones, in about 6 minutes, and I let the water do all of the work for me. Right? So, Mrs. Jones, genuinely let the water do the work. If you burn anything, literally, you're just going to take a little bit of cup of water, you're going to pour it in the pan, turn it on low, just don't look at it for 5 minutes. So while your food is cooling down and you're serving your table and getting ready for everybody to eat, right, you're letting the water do the work. And then I just come over, scrape it right before I do, put it in the bottom of the sink for a hot second, some hot soapy water right after dinner. I'm putting it right back into my cupboard. That's it. Okay. So I genuinely believe that if you can nail that like 4 to 6 minute little interaction, and by the way, it's usually shorter than that. It's like you're asking a couple questions. You're asking if they've cooked with stainless steel. You're asking if they've ever cooked a steak on a grill and if they put a warm steak or a cold steak on a cold grill. Of course, they wouldn't because it would stick. show them some videos, show them how easy they are to clean. Just that is all I need before I start going into the sets. That's it. I don't talk about the vapor seal. I don't talk about any of that stuff until I start going through the pots and pans within the different sets. And I get to the set that they're like, oh, I would use this one. Right? I don't need to, guys. Because I just got them sold on the reasons most people don't buy stainless steel. They don't cook that well and they're super hard to clean. So I just showed them on how easy they are to use and how easy they are to clean. Oh, and by the way, they're guaranteed for effing ever. And they're American made. Right? It is not complicated. That is it. The reason I have 260 freaking videos in my folder, guys, is I have examples of pancakes on a griddle, how easy they are to flip over. I have examples of doing Rice Krispie treats in the wok, right? I have examples of people doing caramelized onions, right? And they literally let them caramelize for 35 minutes and the pan is torched. I have an example of how easy that was to clean, right? I have examples of hard-boiled eggs. I have examples of completely torched pans, like Gone Forever pans for most typical other brands, right? And I've just got the simple ones, like myself cooking rice. I've got myself cooking broccoli, right? Random things that you might need to show a customer that again just pop that fear bubble. They're like, well, how the hell do you do that? Or how the hell would I cook this thing that I really like doing in these pans? Because they're not cast iron or because they're not nonstick, whatever that is, right? So as you continue to sell more pots and pans, you will notice how easy it is to sell if you literally just tell them how easy it is to make an egg and how easy it is to clean them, right? So using the things, it's easy to use, it's easy to clean, it's built like a tank, it's guaranteed forever, over and over and over again through showing videos will just help you sell more pots and pans, right? So asking a couple of questions at the beginning to ask their question on knowing where they're at with pots and pans and specifically stainless, right? That's a really important question. And by the way, like I didn't really get into much of like, oh, like how do you pitch this to this person? It's like during an upserve or during like the very beginning of the demo. Like I work on military bases and I've noticed because of how our booths are set up, we're able to have 3 tables and we're like customers kind of pass all 3 of them throughout the day. It is incredible how many people go to the pans first because they're accessible. So it's like if you had pots and pans and were able to bring them to the front, you'd be surprised how much more often you'd start off your pitch by talking about pots and pans, right? So I hope that has added some value. So again, just to recap, keep it simple, stupid when you are talking about the sets. Don't overcomplicate the pieces that are within it. Make sure you have intentionality behind what you guys are putting at the booth and where you're putting your pots and pans. Invest into the pieces if you do not have them. And also just be hyper intentional about asking some questions and popping the biggest fear bubble and the biggest thing you have going against you, which is show them how to cook something without it sticking. And if it does stick, how easy it is to clean. If you can do all of those things, you will notice how easy it is to sell legacy cookware sets, accomplished cookware sets, dedicated cookware sets, because customers feel confident in their ability to be able to do what you do. I will say the last thing, but last but not least, is make sure you guys are intentional about sending customers a 2 to 4 point type of email after the fact with a couple of videos. So I recommend sending like Jason Jeffrey's video. I also remember or recommend sending Josh Muller's how to cook eggs in stainless video with to those customers before they leave or after they leave the booth. When you send them a receipt, make sure you are also sending them some tips and tricks on how to use the pans, and make sure you're intentional about saying, hey, before you use the pans, Mrs. Jones, do yourself a favor and me a favor. Just take 20 minutes and watch those couple of videos because those will remind you of a couple of the things that I mentioned, like medium to low, preheat your pans. They'll remind you of those things because I know a lot's going to happen in the next couple weeks before you get your pots and pans. So the night you get them, cook some popcorn, sit down with your hubby or sit down with your wife or anybody that's cooking in the kitchen with you. Sit down and watch those videos. And then within the first few weeks or ever, Mrs. Jones, literally just reach out to me if you ever have any questions on anything. Okay, I'll be here. I'm your concierge rep to help you out with anything you need. So with that, I've got like 8 minutes for Q&A. So that's what I got for you.
All right. We've got Daniel with a question.
Yeah, I have actually two. First is like the common ones are the cast iron and hex clad. So do you just have videos on them essentially in your folder that go over everything, or do you talk to them about it? Because the one thing I get all the time is a cast iron guy who's super defensive and says it's the best thing in the world.
For sure. Absolutely. So, cast iron and hex clad are two totally different topics, but I'll cover both of those. So I bring them up. I usually will bring them up. Specifically, I'll talk about cast iron usually when I'm talking about like stainless steel right at the beginning. I'll be like, have you ever used cast iron? And they'll say yes. And I was like, cool. Would you ever put like a cold steak onto a cold cast iron pan? And that usually triggers them. They're like, oh, absolutely not. You got to let it sear. So I always say with cast iron specifically, I was like, cast iron's great. It doesn't quite have all of the benefits that like stainless steel has that our pans do, specifically when it comes to like vegetables cooking, right? What I also really love about our pans is you can get an incredibly good sear in a fourth of the time because it usually takes 15 minutes for a person to preheat a cast iron pan properly. Our pans are preheated in 2 minutes, right? Now, hex clad, okay. I was at a restaurant literally last night, guys, in Austin, Texas, and I got this awesome video, and I would recommend if you're ever able to sit at like the chef's table or able to sit at a kitchen where you can see like the kitchen behind closed doors type of situation. I had this video last night where we were at this Italian place, and they had 8 stainless steel pans going, and they had like 15 stainless steel pans all stacked up on top of each other. And the reason why I love this video so much is if you go to a restaurant, Mrs. Jones, what kind of pots and pans are they cooking on? They are not cooking on nonstick pans. They're not cooking on nonstick pans. They are cooking on high quality stainless steel because that is what is required to cook on in the kitchen industry. That's what you cook on. So when it comes to hexclad guys, Gordon Ramsay is using stainless steel pans at his work and at his house. Don't get me twisted. Do not try to tell me that Gordon Ramsay is actually using hexclad pans at home. It's bullshit. Like it's bullshit. Like I get so triggered by it because he's getting paid a lot of money to say he's using them at home, but it's just a lie. He knows how to use stainless steel and knows that stainless steel is just better for you, right? Also, by the way, hexclad is literally going through a class action lawsuit right now for saying and marketing things that are not true. Okay. So hexclad is not even really a conversation I have to mention, but I will usually mention like if a person's like kind of like hemming and hawing, like, oh yeah, I've heard of some other brands of like I'll get on top of that. I'll be like, yeah, Mrs. Jones, just so you know, like, have you ever heard of hexclad? Ironically, Gordon Ramsay as like their spokesperson. Gordon Ramsay, where he works and what he does when he works, when he is cooking, he is using high quality stainless steel pans. There's a video that I found on YouTube or on I had a buddy of mine screen record this on Instagram, and I think I can find it. It is awesome. It's a minute and 30-second video. If you guys Google or look up on Instagram Rick underscore Bayless, RICK underscore Bayless, Bayless. You might have to scroll through his page a little bit, but he has a video specifically on sauteing and how to saute, and it's like a minute and 50 seconds on Instagram, and it's him talking about how most people don't understand why stainless steel pans work the way they do, right? And it's him literally just cooking a chicken breast with just a little bit of oil. It's unbelievable. The visual is fantastic, right? So for me, it's just like this is a chef that is telling you stainless steel is the way to go, right? So like if you find anything online, right, there's a couple of really good TikTok videos too, and also on YouTube videos that like have gone viral for cooking stainless steel stuff. Literally just YouTube cooking eggs in stainless steel. Doesn't even have to be a Cutco pan. It's just like stainless steel is the way to go. Cutco is the way to go because of a couple extra benefits. Guarantee the handles don't get hot, for example. There's no rivets, right? They're oven safe up to 600 degrees without the black handles, right? Like you can put the fry pans in, the griddle into the oven as hot as you freaking want it to, right? But it's just it's helping a person like rewrite the code of what they believe has to happen. Because literally, guys, people genuinely just think they have to cook with nonstick pans to cook an egg without sticking. Genuinely. Like it's insane, but that's what a lot of people in America think, right? So when I'm talking about non-stick pans, I'm like, yeah, there's just a lot of stuff. You probably have done your own research, right? And kind of have heard about the forever chemicals being on our pots and pans, right? One thing that I will say on that is PFOA, right, is just the one chemical that has been banned by the FDA. So when you go into a kitchen store and it says PFOA free, there are literally thousands of other chemicals, right? That do the same thing a PFOA does. They're just not banned yet. That's it. That's the difference. And you guys are in California. You guys are like, your guys' government in general is like way in on like, hey, any type of chemical, watch out, right? There's warnings on like everything, or even our K-bar freaking is got some warning in California, right? It's like, it's so it's such a stigma so ingrained so deep into our culture now that people just believe they have to have nonstick stuff. But people are finally starting to wake up, realizing that they have to buy their pans every like 2 or 3 years. One of my favorite one-liners I'll use with you guys is like when I'm closing with a customer, I'm like, one of the biggest frustrations most Americans have, Mrs. Jones, is like every 3 to 4 years, they wake up and they just take $300 and they just light it on fire and they walk into a kitchen store and buy another set of nonstick pans they hope don't flake and don't stick. But within a couple of months, they start to flake and they start to stick. But then they just kind of put up with them because they just spent $300 on that. Right? Imagine Mrs. Jones going into your cupboard and every single time you need to use a pan and you need to do the thing that it needs to do, it just does the thing it needs to do every single time. And if it warps, if it breaks, if you somehow figure out a way to break a Cutco pan, send it in. Guess what they send you? A brand new one because it's forever. Right? It's like, how can you hit on the pain points your customers are experiencing? I love using the line of like, yeah, you probably had to like let your nonstick pan soak for 3 hours just to clean it. And it's supposed to be nonstick. How nice would it be to be able to just throw your pan that's kind of dirty and throw a little water in it? It's clean after 5 minutes. Be pretty nice, wouldn't it? That's the thing that you get when you buy and invest into the Cutco pots and pans. Time for one more question. So one more.
I got one if no one else has one.
Go ahead.
Awesome. So there's this one that I haven't seen anyone talk about at all, and I want your opinion. It's called
Okay.
Our Place. So I can be on site and stuff, and they're just keep saying like it's the best thing, and he cooks with it. So I'm gonna know your thoughts.
Can you say that one more time? You kind of broke up a bunch.
Oh, my bad. It's called Our Place Cookware, but they have this new one. It's titanium. And there's a chef who basically raves about it. It's a non-stick service. It's almost like a weird pattern they have at the bottom, similar to Hexclad, but with no non-stick coating. It's a titanium like pot something that they use. I wanted to know if you had any thoughts about it because that's the only one I've been stumped by truly because I have no.
So I've never heard of it. Um, so I really can't speak on it. If it has any type of coating on it, it's just like, hey, here's how Cutco is going to help prevent that altogether. So did you say it does have coating or it doesn't have a coating on it? This is
It looked like he got booted. So I know that Daniel's driving to set up an event today, and he might be in the mountains. So I think he might have lost service, but that's a bummer. But maybe you can just give a general answer, and this is recorded, so
there he comes. He's back. He's joined as a guest, it looks like, or he's trying to get back on. So if it has coating, guys, I just would err on the side. It's the same way you talk about Hexclad. Hexclad is the most well-known, high-quality non-stick pans
100.
right now. So it's like that's like if you're gonna talk on like why Cutco versus a high-quality non-stick, it's just like the proof is in the pudding, right? Just be intentional about saying like this is a one time. And just talk about it. If you probably already have customers that have had non-stick or have had Hexclad that really liked it right away, but have now started to not like it, lean on that. right? Hexclad, by the way, guys, has been around way longer than the last couple of years. They've just put a ton of marketing dollars into their stuff recently. They made Gordon Ramsay their head spokesman, but they've been around at shows since like 2016, 17, and it was probably earlier than that. They've been around, right? They've been around for a hot minute. They just have been intense about their marketing dollars. So, but just because there's an increased excitement around it, the same thing happens with other knife companies. There's like, oh my God, they're the best. And then a couple years later, the customers that have them don't get the customer service. They don't actually get the reaction that they thought they were going to get when they originally bought it. So at the end of the day, it's just one of those things where you have to be grounded with the intentionality behind what you're excited about with the Cocoa Pots and Pans. And it works, guaranteed. And again, your videos, customer testimonials, your excitement behind that is enough usually for most customers to be like, okay, I'm in on the Cutco stuff. Cool. Jeremy, go
That's
ahead.
awesome.
You're muted, I think, potentially.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I don't know if you mentioned anything about I know it's not Cutco made, but the American, the non-stick Cutco, not Cutco, but the non-stick pans that we have. Like, you mentioned those. Do you have them now? Do you leave them out? Okay.
Nope, not at all.
When it comes up, people are aware of it, see it, know about it at all. Like,
I'm just like,
a
don't
little
buy
bit
'em.
around that, if anything.
I'm just like, don't buy them. Like, they're just not,
Okay.
not Cutco. I'm like, they're not Cutco brand. So I'm just like, I'm at the end of the day, like if you're looking for a non-stick pan, go buy a cheap one, because the same thing that is going to happen to a cheap one is going to happen to this one. This one might last longer, but it's not guaranteed. So, and at the end of the day, Mrs. Jones, like genuinely, you might spend a little bit more to get the stainless. Just get the stainless, because then you'll just not buy fry pans ever again. So I've had one person buy it from me and they bought it on my website. I've never
Yep.
sold a nonstick, and it's intentional because I've had customers that I've seen other reps in our division have buy the nonstick stuff, and then they come back, they're pissed, they're frustrated, it's not guaranteed because they forget it's not Cutco, but they bought it from the Cutco rep. So it's just like, it's not a partner product I talk about.
That's great. I love that. I wish we didn't have it. I was just curious if you're on the same
Same.
wavelength with me, so it's good. Just
Same.
okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. I wish I had more time. I do have to bounce, Denise. So if you guys have some more questions, again, you guys can feel free to text me. I'll shoot you guys my number in the chat really quick. And then Jeremy, I got your individual text too, or your individual message. So I'll send you some stuff this week. So
Awesome. We really appreciate you, Bert. Thanks for being here, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
yeah, you too, guys. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
See ya.
Let me stop